The morning rush at Sunrise Diner was in full swing, the clinking of silverware against plates, the sizzle of bacon on the grill, and the murmur of conversation created a familiar symphony that had been the soundtrack to Melissa Carter's life for the past 6 years. "Order up for table 7, called out Rico, the cook, his voice barely audible over the din. Melissa expertly balanced 3 plates along her arm as she navigated between tables. At 34, she moved with the efficiency that came from years of practice. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and faint lines had begun to form around her blue eyes, evidence of both laughter and stress. "Here you go, folks. Denver omelet, blueberry pancakes, and the breakfast special," she announced with a warm smile that didn't betray her exhaustion. She'd been on her feet since 5 a.m., and her shift wouldn't end until 2 p.m. A quick glance at her watch made her heart skip. It was already 7:30 a.m., which meant she had exactly 30 minutes to finish her shift preparations before the school called again. Tyler's school had been calling more frequently lately, and it was becoming harder to maintain her carefully balanced life as a single mother working 2 jobs. "Hey Mel, can you take table 12? Just got seated and I'm swamped," called Dina, another waitress who had become something of a surrogate aunt to Tyler over the years. "Sure thing," Melissa replied, already moving toward the newly occupied table. Only then did she notice the man sitting there, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, with a laptop open in front of him and a phone pressed to his ear. He didn't look up as she approached. "Good morning, welcome to Sunrise. Can I start you with some coffee?" she asked, her order pad ready. The man held up a finger without looking at her, continuing his phone conversation. "Listen, Jenkins, I don't care what they're offering. Meridian Technologies isn't budging on this. Tell them our final offer stands at 30 million or we walk." Melissa waited patiently, used to all types of customers after years in the service industry. The corporate types were often the most demanding and the worst tippers. Finally, he ended his call and looked up at her. "Coffee, black, and whatever breakfast you can make the fastest. I have a meeting in 30 minutes. I'll put in a rush order for our quick breakfast, eggs, toast, and bacon. Should be out in about 5 minutes," she said, with practiced efficiency. "Fine," he replied, already turning his attention back to his laptop. As Melissa turned to place his order, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Her heart sank when she saw West Side Elementary on the caller ID. "Sunrise Diner, Melissa speaking," she answered, trying to maintain her professional tone while moving to a quieter corner. "Ms. Carter, this is Principal Dawson. I'm afraid we need to discuss Tyler again. There's been another incident." Melissa closed her eyes briefly. "What happened this time?" "Tyler got into an altercation with another student. Nothing physical, but there were some concerning threats made. We really need you to come in for a meeting today. This can't wait until your scheduled conference next week." "I understand," Melissa said, her mind already racing through the impossible logistics. Her shift ended at 2 p.m., after which she had exactly 1 hour before starting her evening job at the local grocery store. Would 2:30 work? After confirming the meeting time, she returned to the kitchen to place the rush order for the businessman. Rico gave her a concerned look. "School again?" She nodded, blinking back tears of frustration. "I don't know what to do anymore, Rico. This is the 3rd call this month." Rico's weathered face softened. "Tyler's a good kid, Mel. He's just going through a tough time." "I know, but I can't keep taking time off work. I barely make ends meet as it is, and if I lose either of these jobs..." She trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. "Go to the meeting. I'll cover for you with Larry," Rico offered, referring to their perpetually grumpy manager. Melissa squeezed his arm gratefully before taking the businessman's coffee to his table. He was still absorbed in his laptop, barely acknowledging her presence as she set down the mug. "Your breakfast will be right out, sir," she said, receiving only a grunt in response. The rest of her morning passed in a blur of orders, coffee refills, and the constant gnawing worry about Tyler. At 11, her phone vibrated again. This time it was a text from Mrs. Patel, her elderly neighbor who watched Tyler after school until Melissa came home from her evening job. "Tyler left his science project here, needs it today. Can you pick it up?" Another impossible demand on her already impossible schedule. Melissa stepped outside for a moment, the cool autumn air providing little relief from the mounting pressure. She calculated the time. If she skipped lunch and ran to her apartment during her break between jobs, She might be able to get the project and deliver it to the school before her grocery store shift started at 3:30 p.m. When she returned inside, the businessman was preparing to leave. He'd left exact change for his bill, no tip. Melissa sighed as she cleared his table, finding a half-eaten breakfast and a coffee cup with a lipstick mark on the rim, despite the fact that she wasn't wearing any. "Some people," muttered Dina, who had witnessed the scene. "Don't let it get to you, Mel." But it wasn't just the absent tip that bothered Melissa. It was the casual disregard, the reminder of the invisible wall between people like him and people like her. In another life, with different circumstances and opportunities, could she have been the one in the expensive suit, making million-dollar deals over breakfast? The thought was interrupted by the arrival of the lunchtime crowd. Melissa pushed her personal concerns aside and focused on her job, moving between tables with practiced ease. By the time her shift ended, her feet were throbbing, and her mind was consumed with the logistics of the next few hours. As she hung up her apron, Larry, the manager, approached her with a frown. "Melissa, we need to talk about these absences." "I know, Larry, and I'm sorry. It's Tyler's school. I understand you're a single mom, and that's tough. But I've got a business to run. I can't keep having my waitstaff disappear in the middle of shifts." The implicit threat hung in the air between them. Melissa nodded, swallowing hard. It won't happen again. But even as she said it, she knew it was a promise she couldn't keep. Something would have to give, and soon. Outside the diner, the autumn sun was bright, but offered little warmth. Melissa pulled her jacket tighter around herself as she hurried to the bus stop. She had 45 minutes to get home, retrieve Tyler's science project, and make it to the school for the meeting with Principal Dawson. On the bus, she closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself a moment of rare stillness. The exhaustion was bone deep, a constant companion that never quite left her even in sleep. But beneath the fatigue was a fierce determination that had carried her through the past 9 years since Tyler's father had walked out on them when she was just 3 months pregnant. As the bus lurched through city traffic, Melissa's thoughts turned to Tyler, her bright, sensitive boy who had started acting out in school over the past few months. The teacher's reports described a child she barely recognized, defiant, withdrawn, occasionally hostile. At home, he was increasingly quiet, spending hours drawing elaborate battle scenes or reading alone in his room. She had tried talking to him, but their conversations inevitably ended with Tyler retreating further into himself. The child psychologist at the community center had suggested that Tyler might be struggling with abandonment issues, exacerbated by Melissa's long working hours. The suggestion had felt like a knife to her heart. She was working those hours for him, to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. The bus stopped a block from their apartment building, and Melissa hurried down the street. The neighborhood wasn't the worst in the city, but it wasn't the best either. Most of the residents were working-class families or elderly people on fixed incomes. Their apartment building was a 5-story walk-up, with unreliable heat and a persistent mold problem that the landlord consistently ignored. Mrs. Patel was waiting at her door. Tyler's science project, a solar system model made from painted styrofoam balls, carefully held in her gnarled hands. "He worked so hard on this," the elderly woman said, her Indian accent still strong despite decades in the country. "Very bright boy, your Tyler." "Thank you for watching him, Mrs. Patel. I don't know what I'd do without you," Melissa said sincerely. "We take care of each other, yes? Community." Mrs. Patel smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. "Don't worry about rushing back. Tyler can stay for dinner if needed." With the precious science project carefully tucked under her arm, Melissa headed back to the bus stop. As she waited, her phone rang again. It was her supervisor from the grocery store. "Melissa, I know it's last minute, but can you come in at 3 instead of 3:30 today? Jen called in sick and we're short-staffed." The request sent a spike of anxiety through her. "I have a school meeting at 2:30. I don't think I can make it by 3. There was a pause on the other end. "This is becoming a pattern, Melissa. We need reliable employees." "I understand." "I'll try to make it as soon as I can," she promised, knowing she would have to cut the school meeting short, something that would not impress Principal Dawson. By the time she arrived at Westside Elementary, Melissa was out of breath and 5 minutes late. The school building was a sprawling brick structure that had seen better days, much like the surrounding neighborhood. Inside, the hallways were lined with children's artwork and motivational posters about respect and responsibility. Principal Dawson was waiting in his office, along with Tyler's teacher, Ms. Reynolds, and the school counselor, Mr. Garcia. Tyler sat in a chair outside the office, his small face set in a defiant expression that broke Melissa's heart. "Mom, I didn't do anything wrong," he said immediately upon seeing her. "We'll talk about it, honey. Let me speak with your principal first, okay?" She set down the science project next to him. "Don't forget this for class." Inside the office, the atmosphere was tense. Principal Dawson, a balding man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, gestured for her to take a seat. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming in. I know it's not easy with your work schedule." The acknowledgement did little to ease her anxiety. "What happened today?" Ms. Reynolds, a young teacher in her second year, spoke first. "Tyler got into an argument with another student, Jason, during recess. Jason was teasing Tyler about not having a father." Melissa's stomach clenched. It was not the first time Tyler had faced such taunts. "Tyler told Jason that he would make him sorry," Mr. Garcia continued. When asked what he meant, Tyler refused to elaborate. "This is the third such incident this month, and we're concerned about the pattern of behavior. Has anyone addressed the fact that this Jason was bullying my son?" Melissa asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. "We've spoken to Jason and his parents," Principal Dawson assured her. "But our concern today is Tyler's response. Threats, even vague ones, are something we take very seriously." The meeting continued for 20 minutes, during which various concerns were raised. Tyler's falling grades, his reluctance to participate in group activities, his increasing isolation from his peers. The school offered resources, counseling, a weekly check-in with Mr. Garcia, a behavior plan. Melissa listened, nodding at appropriate intervals, while her mind raced with the implications. More meetings meant more time away from work, more potential conflicts with her employers, more juggling of an already impossible schedule. As the meeting wound down, Principal Dawson fixed her with a sympathetic but firm gaze. "Ms. Carter, I understand your situation is challenging, but Tyler needs more support right now. Have you considered adjusting your work hours, at least temporarily?" The question, though gently phrased, felt like an accusation, as if she hadn't already considered every possible arrangement, every potential sacrifice. "I'll figure something out," she said finally, rising from her chair. "May I take Tyler now? He has a science project to deliver to his class." Outside, Tyler was waiting, his eyes downcast. The science project sat untouched beside him. "Come on, buddy. Let's get this to your classroom," she said, trying to infuse her voice with a cheerfulness she didn't feel. Tyler trudged alongside her down the hallway. "Are you mad at me?" he asked in a small voice. Melissa stopped and knelt down to his level, looking into eyes so much like her own. "I'm not mad, Tyler. I'm concerned, and I wish you would talk to me about what's bothering you." Tyler shrugged, his gaze sliding away from hers. "Nothing's bothering me. Jason said some mean things about Dad not being around, huh?" A flicker of emotion crossed Tyler's face before he shuttered it away. "I don't care about that. I don't need a dad." But the tremor in his voice told a different story. Melissa pulled him into a hug, feeling his small body tense before reluctantly relaxing against her. "I love you more than anything in this world, Tyler. Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out together, okay?" He nodded against her shoulder, and for a moment he was her little boy again, not the troubled 9-year-old who was slipping away from her a little more each day. After delivering the science project to his classroom, Melissa kissed Tyler goodbye, promised to talk more at home, and raced to catch the bus to the grocery store. She was already 15 minutes late for her shifted start time, and her supervisor's disapproving look when she arrived told her everything she needed to know about her job security. As she donned the green apron and prepared to spend the next 6 hours stocking shelves and operating a cash register, Melissa couldn't shake the feeling that she was failing. Failing Tyler. Failing at her jobs. Failing at the life she had tried so hard to build for them. Something had to change. She just didn't know what or how. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Melissa's mood as she prepared for another day at Sunrise Diner. Tyler was uncharacteristically quiet as he ate his cereal, his eyes fixed on the worn kitchen table. "Remember, Mrs. Patel will pick you up after school," Melissa said, packing an apple and a peanut butter sandwich into his lunchbox. "I should be home by 10. Tyler nodded without looking up. "Can I go to Jason's house after school instead?" Melissa paused, surprised. "Jason, the boy you had the trouble with yesterday." "We made up," Tyler said with a shrug. His mom said I could come over. They have the new PlayStation. Melissa frowned, suspicious of this sudden friendship, but also relieved that Tyler might be making connections. I'll need to talk to his mom first. Do you have her number? Tyler scribbled a number on a scrap of paper and pushed it across the table. Melissa tucked it into her pocket, promising to call later. The morning routine continued, brushing teeth, checking backpacks, the hurried walk to the bus stop through the light rain. As they waited, Melissa noticed Tyler watching a father and son across the street, the man adjusting the boy's raincoat with tender attention. "Mom," Tyler said suddenly, his voice small, "do you think he ever thinks about me?" The question caught her off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have after yesterday's incident. "Your dad," she clarified gently. Tyler nodded, still watching the father and son. Melissa chose her words carefully. "I think he must sometimes, but honey, his choices aren't about you. They're about him and his own problems." It was the truth, or at least part of it. What she didn't say was that Tyler's father, Mark, had made it abundantly clear that fatherhood wasn't in his plans. Their relationship had been brief, a summer romance that had fizzled out before she even knew she was pregnant. When she told him, he had offered money for an abortion, and when she refused, had signed away his parental rights and disappeared from their lives. The school bus arrived before Tyler could ask more questions, and Melissa watched him climb aboard, his small shoulders hunched against more than just the rain. The bus ride to Sunrise Diner gave her time to think. Perhaps it was time to be more honest with Tyler about his father. At 9, he was old enough to understand some of the complexities of adult relationships, but she had always been careful not to paint Mark as a villain, hoping that someday he might mature and want to know his son. That hope had grown increasingly faint over the years. The last she had heard, Mark had moved to California to pursue a career in music. That had been 5 years ago, and there had been no contact since. The diner was already bustling when she arrived. Dinah greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "Rough day yesterday?" "The usual impossible juggling act," Melissa replied, tying her apron. "Any chance Larry's in a good mood today?" "Larry? Good mood? Those words don't belong in the same sentence," Dina laughed. "But he's not on the warpath, if that's what you're asking." The morning rush kept them busy, and Melissa fell into the familiar rhythm of orders and deliveries. Around 9, the door chimed, and the businessman from yesterday entered, once again absorbed in his phone conversation. "Table 12 again," Dina murmured. "Your lucky day." Melissa approached the table with professional detachment. "Good morning, coffee?" This time the man looked up briefly. "Yes, black, and I'll have the same as yesterday." She nodded and turned to leave when his voice stopped her. "Actually, wait. How's the Western omelet here?" "It's good. Rico makes it with fresh peppers and onions, and the cheese is decent," she answered honestly. He considered for a moment. "I'll try that instead." It was a small interaction, but it felt like progress. As she placed his order with Rico, she found herself wondering about the man. He was handsome in a conventional way, dark hair with just a touch of silver at the temples, sharp features, the polished look of someone who knew exactly how the world worked and his place in it. "Your businessman's back," Rico noted, breaking into her thoughts. "He must have liked your service yesterday," Melissa snorted. "He didn't leave a tip, Rico." Rico raised an eyebrow. "Maybe he was having a bad day. Give him another chance." When she delivered the omelet, the man was typing rapidly on his laptop. He barely glanced up to acknowledge the food. Melissa was about to walk away when he spoke. "Is the cook here good at creating new dishes, or just following recipes?" The question was unexpected. "Rico? He's brilliant, actually. He's always experimenting with new combinations. Why do you ask?" The man looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers directly for the first time. "Just curious. This place has potential, but the menu is uninspired." Melissa bristled at the criticism. "The menu caters to our clientele. Not everyone wants deconstructed avocado toast or whatever's trendy in upscale restaurants." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Fair point, but innovation doesn't have to mean pretension." Before she could respond, her phone vibrated. Excusing herself, she checked the message and felt a jolt of anxiety. It was from the school again. "Tyler involved in incident. Please call ASAP." "Everything okay?" the man asked, noticing her expression. "Fine," she said automatically, already moving away. "Enjoy your omelet." In the back hallway near the restrooms, Melissa called the school, her heart pounding. Mr. Garcia answered on the second ring. Ms. Carter, thank you for calling back so quickly. There's been another incident with Tyler and Jason. What happened? Is Tyler hurt? No, nothing physical. But Tyler took something of Jason's, an expensive action figure. When confronted, he denied it, but the figure was found in his backpack. Melissa's mind reeled. Tyler had never stolen anything before. There must be some mistake. Tyler is insisting he didn't take it, that Jason planted it in his bag. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, but given yesterday's incident, the implication was clear. They believed Tyler was escalating from threats to theft. I'll come in right away, Melissa said, her voice hollow. Ending the call, she leaned against the wall, fighting back tears of frustration. When she returned to the dining area, Larry was waiting for her, his expression grim. School again? He asked, his tone making it clear that he already knew the answer. Larry, I'm sorry, it's an emergency. It's always an emergency, Melissa. I've been more than patient, but this is a business, not a charity. She knew what was coming before he said it. The knowledge didn't make it any easier to hear. I think it's best if we part ways. You're a good waitress when you're here, but I need someone reliable. The words hit her like physical blows. Larry, please, I need this job. I can find better childcare arrangements, work different hours. I'm sorry, Melissa, it's not personal, it's business. As he walked away, Melissa became aware of the businessman watching the exchange from his table. The last thing she needed was an audience to her humiliation. Squaring her shoulders, she approached Dina. I have to go to the school. Tyler's in trouble again. Dina's eyes widened at her tone. What happened with Larry? I'm fired, Melissa said, the words burning in her throat. Can you cover my tables? I'll get my last check later. Oh, Mel. Dina's eyes filled with sympathy. Of course. Go take care of Tyler. And call me later, okay? In the locker room, Melissa changed out of her uniform with shaking hands. The loss of the diner job would be devastating. Even with both jobs, she had been barely keeping afloat. With just the grocery store position, they would fall behind on rent within a month. As she left, she noticed the businessman had gone, leaving behind a $20 bill for a $12 meal. The generous tip coming now felt like a mockery. The school was a 20-minute bus ride away. During the journey, Melissa tried calling the number Tyler had given her for Jason's mother, but it went straight to voicemail. She left a brief message expressing her concern about the boys' conflict and asking for a callback. At Westside Elementary, she found Tyler waiting outside the principal's office again, his face streaked with dried tears. I didn't steal it, Mom, he said immediately, his voice breaking. I swear. Melissa knelt before him. I believe you, Tyler. We'll figure this out. The meeting with Principal Dawson and Mr. Garcia was tense. Jason's parents had been called, but were unable to come in until later that day. Without hearing from all parties, no definitive conclusion could be reached. However, Principal Dawson said gravely, given the pattern of behavior we've been seeing, and without evidence to the contrary, we have to consider that Tyler may be responsible. What evidence would that be? Melissa asked, her frustration mounting. The fact that the figure was found in his backpack? Couldn't Jason have put it there himself? Ms. Carter, we understand your instinct to defend your son, but we need to address the possibility that Tyler is acting out in ways that require intervention. The meeting ended with Tyler receiving an in-school suspension for the remainder of the day and the next. Additionally, Mr. Garcia strongly recommended counseling sessions, providing Melissa with a list of community resources. As they left the school, Tyler walked beside her in silence, his earlier protestations of innocence replaced by a resigned acceptance that broke Melissa's heart. Tyler, I meant what I said. I believe you. He looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. Really? Really. But we need to understand why this is happening. If Jason is targeting you, we need to address it. Tyler seemed to consider this. Jason said his dad knows important people, that he could make bad things happen to people he doesn't like. The statement sent a chill through Melissa. Did you tell Mr. Garcia about this? Tyler shook his head. No one would believe me. Jason's dad is rich. He gives money to the school. The revelation added another layer to the situation. Melissa made a mental note to look into Jason's family background. If there was an imbalance of power at play, it might explain why the school seemed so quick to blame Tyler. As they walked to the bus stop, Melissa realized she needed to tell Tyler about losing her job at the diner. But looking at his defeated expression, she couldn't bring herself to add another burden to his young shoulders. Instead, she suggested they get ice cream before heading home, a small extravagance that felt both necessary and irresponsible given their financial situation. At the small ice cream parlor near their apartment, Tyler's mood lightened slightly as he enjoyed a chocolate cone. Melissa used the opportunity to broach the subject of his father. "Tyler, about what you asked this morning, about your dad. I want you to know that it's okay to have questions about him." Tyler licked his ice cream, considering. "Jason said that my dad didn't want me. That's why he left." The cruelty of the statement took her breath away. "That's not true, Tyler. Your dad was young and scared. He wasn't ready to be a father. That's about him, not about you." "But he never even tried," Tyler said, the hurt in his voice unmistakable. "He never even wanted to meet me." Melissa chose her next words carefully. "Sometimes people make choices they later regret. Maybe someday he'll realize what he missed out on. But Tyler, not having him in your life doesn't make you any less special or loved." "But all the other kids have dads," Tyler insisted. "Even if their parents are divorced, they still see their dads." It was a reality Melissa couldn't deny or change. Families come in all different forms, Tyler. Some kids have two dads, some have two moms, some are raised by grandparents. What matters is that you're loved. Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Do you think if I was different, he would have stayed?" The question broke her heart. "No, sweetheart, absolutely not. His leaving had nothing to do with you. You were perfect then, and you're perfect now." They finished their ice cream in companionable silence. As they walked home, Tyler slipped his hand into hers, a gesture he had recently begun to find embarrassing in public. The small sign of trust gave Melissa hope that they would find their way through this difficult time. At home, Tyler settled in to work on homework, while Melissa made a series of increasingly desperate phone calls. First to the grocery store, explaining that she would be able to take on more hours now. Then to various diners and restaurants in the area, inquiring about waitress positions. Finally, to their landlord, asking if she could have an extension on next month's rent if necessary. The responses were uniformly discouraging. The grocery store could offer a few more hours, but not enough to make up for the lost income from the diner. The restaurants were either not hiring or required experience she didn't have. The landlord was sympathetic but firm. Rent was due on the 1st, no exceptions. By the time Mrs. Patel arrived to watch Tyler for her evening shift at the grocery store, Melissa was fighting back tears of frustration and fear. "You look troubled," the elderly woman observed, her dark eyes keen with concern. "I lost my job at the diner today," Melissa admitted. "I'm not sure how we're going to manage." Mrs. Patel clicked her tongue sympathetically. "This is hard, yes, but you are strong, Melissa. You will find a way." The vote of confidence, simple as it was, gave Melissa a small measure of comfort. "Thank you for watching, Tyler. I should be back by 10. Take all the time you need. The boy and I will make curry together. He likes to help in the kitchen." The grocery store was busy for a weeknight, which at least kept Melissa's mind occupied. Her supervisor, Mark, a different Mark than Tyler's father, a coincidence that had always struck her as ironic, was thankfully more understanding than Larry had been. "If you need more hours, I can try to arrange it," he offered after hearing about her situation. "You're a good worker, Melissa. We value that here." The words were a balm to her wounded pride, but they didn't solve the fundamental problem. Even with more hours at the grocery store, she would still be short on rent and utilities. As she scanned items at the checkout, Melissa's mind raced through options. She could apply for additional assistance programs, though the waiting lists were often long. She could look for a third job, though she was already stretched thin with two. She could ask her mother for help, though that would mean enduring another lecture about her life choices. None of the options were appealing, but she would have to choose something. The alternative, losing their apartment, disrupting Tyler's already fragile stability, was unthinkable. By the time her shift ended, Melissa was physically and emotionally exhausted. The bus ride home felt longer than usual, the dim lights of the city blurring through the rain-streaked windows. Mrs. Patel was dozing in the armchair when Melissa let herself into the apartment. The smell of curry lingered in the air, a warm and comforting presence. "He is sleeping," Mrs. Patel said softly, gathering her things. "He helped make dinner. Very good with the spices, your boy." "Thank you for everything," Melissa said, walking the elderly woman to the door. "Remember, we are community, Mrs. Patel replied, patting her arm. Tomorrow is a new day. After she left, Melissa checked on Tyler, who was indeed fast asleep, his face peaceful in a way it rarely was while awake these days. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, overwhelmed by love and the fierce desire to protect him from the harsh realities of their situation. In the kitchen, she found a plate of curry covered with aluminum foil and a note in Tyler's careful handwriting. "For you, Mum, it's really good. Love, Tyler." The simple gesture brought tears to her eyes. Despite everything, the school troubles, the absent father, the financial struggles, Tyler was still capable of such thoughtfulness. Melissa ate the curry standing at the kitchen counter, too tired to sit. It was indeed delicious, with just the right balance of spices. As she ate, she noticed Tyler's backpack on a kitchen chair, partially open with papers spilling out. Intending to organize it for the morning, she began gathering the papers when a folded note caught her eye. It was written in childish handwriting, but not Tyler's. "Meet me at the playground after school. Bring $20 or I'll tell everyone your mom got fired for stealing. Jason." The note sent a surge of anger through Melissa. This was bullying, plain and simple, and it suggested that Jason might indeed have planted the action figure in Tyler's backpack as part of a larger pattern of intimidation. She carefully refolded the note and put it in her own bag. Tomorrow, she would take it to Principal Dawson as evidence. But first, she needed to talk to Tyler about it in the morning. As she prepared for bed, Melissa's phone chimed with a text from Dina. "Rico and I are fighting for you. Larry's being an ass, but we're not giving up. Hang in there, Mel." The message brought a small smile to her face. She was not entirely alone in this struggle. She had friends, even if they couldn't solve her most pressing problems. Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams filled with faceless figures demanding money she didn't have, and Tyler standing alone on a playground, waiting for someone who never came. The note from Jason weighed heavily on Melissa's mind as she prepared breakfast the next morning. Tyler was unusually quiet, pushing his cereal around rather than eating it. "Tyler," she began gently, "I found a note in your backpack last night, from Jason." His head snapped up, eyes wide with fear. "You weren't supposed to see that. Were you going to give him money?" Tyler's eyes dropped back to his cereal. "I don't have $20. "That's not the point, honey. This is bullying. Jason is trying to extort you." "Extort?" Tyler repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. "It means he's threatening you to get money. It's wrong, and it's against school rules." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Did you know about me losing my job at the diner?" Tyler nodded reluctantly. "I heard you talking to Mrs. Patel. Are we going to be okay?" The question, so simple yet so loaded, made her heart ache. "Yes, we're going to be okay. I'll find another job. But Tyler, why didn't you tell me about Jason's note?" "I didn't want to worry you more," he admitted in a small voice. "And Jason said if I told, he'd make things worse." Melissa felt a fresh wave of anger. No child should have to carry such burdens. "I'm going to talk to Principal Dawson today. This note proves that Jason has been bullying you." Tyler's expression turned panicked. "No, Mom, please don't. It'll just make everything worse." "Tyler, we can't let this continue. Jason put that action figure in your backpack, didn't he? To get you in trouble." The resignation in Tyler's nod confirmed her suspicions. "He said his dad knows the principal, that no one would believe me over him." Melissa reached across the table and took Tyler's hand. "I believe you, and I'm going to make sure Principal Dawson understands what's really happening. This isn't fair to you, and it needs to stop." Tyler still looked uncertain, but he squeezed her hand back. "What about your job? Are you going to find a new one today?" The innocent question brought reality crashing back. In her concern for Tyler's situation, she had momentarily pushed aside their financial predicament. "I'm going to look for one after I talk to your principal," she assured him. "Don't worry about that part. That's my job, not yours." After walking Tyler to the bus stop, Melissa headed directly to Westside Elementary. She had called the grocery store earlier and explained that she would be late for her afternoon shift, another absence that could jeopardize her remaining source of income. But this couldn't wait. Principal Dawson seemed surprised to see her without an appointment, but ushered her into his office nonetheless. "Ms. Carter, what can I do for you this morning?" Melissa pulled Jason's note from her bag and placed it on his desk. "I found this in Tyler's backpack last night. I believe it proves that Jason has been bullying him, including planting that action figure to get him in trouble." The principal read the note, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "This is serious, Ms. Carter. Bullying and extortion are severe violations of our school code of conduct. Tyler says that Jason told him no one would believe him because Jason's father knows you personally. Melissa pressed, watching the principal's reaction carefully. A flicker of discomfort crossed Dawson's face. Mr. Reynolds serves on our school board, yes, but that would never influence how we handle disciplinary matters. Melissa wasn't entirely convinced, but she pressed on. My son is being victimized, and instead of getting help, he's being punished. I need to know that you're going to address this properly. Principal Dawson assured her that he would speak with Jason and his parents immediately, and that Tyler's suspension would be lifted pending the investigation. It was a small victory, but Melissa left the school feeling marginally better about that situation at least. The rest of her day was spent in a desperate search for employment. She visited every restaurant, cafe, and diner within bus distance, filling out applications and emphasizing her years of experience. A few places seemed promising, but none were hiring immediately. The best offer was a possible position starting in 2 weeks. 2 weeks was too long. Rent was due in 10 days, and her last paycheck from Sunrise Diner wouldn't cover it alone. By mid-afternoon, discouraged and exhausted, Melissa found herself back near Sunrise Diner. She hadn't intended to go there, but her feet had carried her to the familiar location almost on autopilot. Through the window, she could see Dina moving between tables. Rico's large frame was visible through the service window, flipping pancakes with his usual flair. The sight brought an unexpected lump to her throat. Despite the long hours and modest pay, the diner had been a sort of home for her these past 6 years. As she stood there, someone tapped her shoulder. Turning, she found herself face to face with the businessman from the day before. Fired for attending to a family emergency, he said without preamble. That seems particularly harsh. Melissa bristled at his directness. I don't see how that's any of your business. It's not, he agreed easily, but I couldn't help overhearing yesterday. I assume you're looking for a new position. Yes, she admitted reluctantly. Do you know somewhere that's hiring? The man seemed to consider his words carefully. I might, but first, may I buy you a cup of coffee? I'd like to hear more about your situation. Every instinct told Melissa to decline. This man, with his expensive suit and corporate demeanor, inhabited a world entirely different from hers. What could he possibly understand about her struggles? But desperation has a way of overriding caution. One coffee, she agreed, but not here. I'd prefer somewhere else, he nodded, understanding her reluctance to return to the diner so soon after being fired. There's a decent place around the corner. The cafe he led her to was small but upscale, with prices that made Melissa wince internally. They settled at a table near the window, and the man ordered 2 coffees without consulting the menu. I realize I haven't properly introduced myself, he said once the barista had left. Daniel Mercer, CEO of Meridian Technologies. The name meant nothing to Melissa, but his title explained the expensive suit and business calls. Melissa Carter. You have a son, I gather, Daniel asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Tyler. He's 9. Melissa's guard was still up, uncertain about this man's interest in her situation. And he's having some trouble at school? The directness of the question caught her off guard. How did you... You mentioned the school calling yesterday when you received a message, Daniel explained, and it seemed to be the emergency that cost you your job. Their coffees arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the conversation. Melissa added a splash of cream to hers, using the time to gather her thoughts. Yes, Tyler's been having some issues. Another boy has been bullying him, but the school initially blamed Tyler for the problems. I think we're finally making progress on that front at least. Daniel nodded, listening intently. And now you're looking for a new job to replace the diner position? I need to find something quickly, she admitted. I have another part-time job at a grocery store, but it's not enough to cover our expenses. What would be your ideal work situation if you could design it yourself? Daniel asked, surprising her again with his directness. Melissa considered the question. No one had ever asked her that before. Something with consistent hours that would allow me to be home when Tyler gets out of school. A living wage, obviously, and... She hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. Something that uses more of my skills than just carrying plates or scanning groceries. What skills would those be? Daniel's tone remained neutral, but his gaze was assessing. I have an associate's degree in business administration, Melissa said, feeling oddly defensive. I was working toward my bachelor's when I got pregnant with Tyler. I'm good with numbers, organizing, problem solving. I managed the inventory system at the diner for the last 3 years, even though it wasn't officially part of my job. Daniel took a sip of his coffee, his expression thoughtful. Meridian Technologies has an opening for an executive assistant in our operations department. The hours are 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. The pay is considerably better than waitressing, and it comes with full benefits. Would that interest you? Melissa stared at him, certain she had misheard. Are you offering me a job? I'm suggesting you apply for one, Daniel clarified. You'd need to interview with our HR department and the department head, but I can expedite the process. Suspicion replaced surprise. Why would you do that? You don't know me. Daniel set down his coffee cup, his expression serious. I've observed you for 2 days at the diner. You're efficient, attentive, and handle pressure well. You manage to provide excellent service while clearly dealing with significant personal stress. Those are valuable qualities in any employee. The explanation seemed reasonable, but Melissa still felt there was something he wasn't saying. And it has nothing to do with pity for the single mom who got fired. A smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. I don't make business decisions based on pity, Ms. Carter. I make them based on potential return on investment. You strike me as someone who would excel in a more challenging role than serving breakfast. The offer was tempting, almost too tempting. Melissa had long ago resigned herself to the limitations of her current path, seeing no clear way to bridge the gap between her circumstances and her abandoned ambitions. I would need to start very soon, she said cautiously. My rent is due in 10 days. The position is available immediately. If you're interested, I can have HR contact you this afternoon to set up an interview for tomorrow. It felt surreal, like a plot twist in a movie, rather than her actual life. Why are you really doing this? Daniel considered her for a moment. Let's just say I recognize untapped potential when I see it, and I believe in second chances. There was something in his tone that suggested personal experience, but Melissa didn't press. Instead, she provided her contact information and thanked him, still half convinced that nothing would come of the offer. After they parted ways, Melissa headed to the grocery store for her afternoon shift, her mind spinning with the unexpected turn of events. Mark was understanding about her lateness, especially when she explained about addressing Tyler's bullying situation at school. Any luck with the job search? He asked as she tied on her green apron. Maybe, she said, still hesitant to believe in Daniel Mercer's offer. I'll know more tomorrow. The shift passed in a blur of scanning items and bagging groceries. Around 6, her phone rang with an unknown number. Stepping away from her register during a lull, she answered, Ms. Carter, this is Sophia Rivera from Meridian Technologies HR department. Daniel Mercer suggested I contact you about our executive assistant position. The call was brief but professional. An interview was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next morning. Sophia emailed her details about the position, including the salary range, which was more than double what Melissa had been making at both her jobs combined. By the time she returned home that evening, Melissa was still in a state of disbelief. The day had begun with the discovery of Jason's bullying note and had somehow ended with a job interview that could potentially transform their lives. Mrs. Patel was full of questions about her day, and Melissa found herself sharing the unexpected development. See? I told you that you are strong, the elderly woman said with satisfaction. The universe makes a way when we are ready. Tyler was already asleep when Melissa checked on him, worn out from the emotional strain of the past few days. She sat on the edge of his bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest, and allowed herself a moment of cautious hope. If she got this job, they could afford a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. Tyler could attend a school with more resources. They might even be able to start a college fund for him, something that had seemed like an impossible luxury until now, but Melissa was cautious by nature, hardened by years of setbacks and broken promises. She wouldn't count on anything until she had a firm job offer in hand. The next morning, after seeing Tyler off to school, his suspension lifted thanks to the evidence of Jason's bullying, Melissa prepared for her interview. Her wardrobe options were limited, but she found a simple black dress that had been tucked away in the back of her closet, left over from a time before waitressing uniforms and grocery store aprons had become her daily attire. The Meridian Technologies building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the city's business district. Melissa felt distinctly out of place as she entered the sleek lobby, her worn purse clutched tightly against her side. At the reception desk, She gave her name and was directed to the 14th floor. The elevator ride gave her a moment to collect herself, to push down the anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her. This was an opportunity she couldn't afford to squander. Sofia Rivera, the HR representative, was a polished woman in her 40s with a warm smile that helped ease some of Melissa's nervousness. The initial interview questions were standard: background, experience, reasons for seeking the position. "I notice there's a significant gap in your formal work history," Sofia observed, looking at Melissa's hastily updated resume. "Can you tell me about that?" Melissa explained about becoming a single mother at 25, putting her education on hold, and focusing on jobs that allowed her to support Tyler. "But I've never stopped learning," she added, with quiet determination. "I've taken free online courses in business administration and office management. I've applied those skills in my jobs, even when they weren't formally recognized. At the diner, I reorganized their inventory system and reduced waste by 15%. The interview continued with Sofia seeming increasingly impressed. Then the door opened, and Daniel Mercer entered, along with an older woman introduced as Patricia Langdon, the operations director. The next phase of the interview was more challenging, with Patricia asking pointed questions about how Melissa would handle specific scenarios and what systems she would implement to keep the department running efficiently. Drawing on her experience managing the chaotic flow of a busy diner during rush hours, Melissa outlined practical approaches to scheduling, prioritization, and communication. Patricia's initial skepticism seemed to fade as the conversation progressed. "Ms. Carter," Daniel said finally, "would you mind stepping outside for a moment while we confer?" The 10 minutes Melissa spent waiting in the outer office felt like hours. She distracted herself by observing the efficient movement of employees through the space, the subtle interplay of hierarchy and cooperation. When she was called back in, all 3 interviewers were standing. Patricia stepped forward first. "Ms. Carter, I believe you would be an excellent addition to our team. The position is yours if you want it." The relief was so intense that for a moment Melissa couldn't speak. "I do," she managed finally. "Thank you for this opportunity. I won't let you down. There's one more thing," Daniel added. "Given your situation with your son, we'd like to offer a flexible start date. Would next Monday work for you? That would give you time to give notice at your current job and make any necessary childcare arrangements." The consideration was unexpected and deeply appreciated. "Monday would be perfect. Thank you." As Sofia walked her through the paperwork and details of the position, Melissa felt a surreal sense of transformation. 24 hours ago, she had been a recently fired waitress desperately searching for any job. Now she was signing employment papers for a position that could change the trajectory of both her and Tyler's lives. When she left the building an hour later, the city seemed somehow brighter, the future more possible than it had in years. Her first call was to Mark at the grocery store, giving her notice but offering to work through the weekend. He was disappointed to lose her but genuinely happy about her new opportunity. Next, she called the school to check on Tyler. Mr. Garcia assured her that Tyler was doing well and that they had addressed the situation with Jason and his parents. The bullying would be dealt with appropriately, and Tyler's record had been cleared of the theft accusation. Finally, she texted Dina with the news, receiving an immediate response full of exclamation points and celebration emojis. By the time Tyler's school day ended, Melissa was waiting at the bus stop, unable to contain her excitement about sharing the news with him. "Mom, why aren't you at work?" Tyler asked as he climbed off the bus, his expression confused but pleased. "I have some news, buddy. Let's get ice cream and talk about it." Over chocolate scoops at their favorite parlor, Melissa explained about the job offer, the better salary, and what it could mean for their future. "So we won't have to worry about money anymore?" Tyler asked, his eyes wide with the simplicity of a child's understanding. "We'll still need to be careful," Melissa clarified, "but we'll be in a much better position. And I'll be home when you get out of school most days." Tyler's face lit up at this last part. "Really? No more Mrs. Patel?" "We'll still see Mrs. Patel," Melissa assured him. "She's our friend, but you won't need to stay with her every day after school." As they walked home, Tyler's hand firmly in hers, Melissa felt a deep sense of gratitude. Whatever Daniel Mercer's reasons for giving her this chance, she was determined to prove his faith in her well placed. The weekend passed in a flurry of preparation. Melissa worked her final shifts at the grocery store, arranged a celebratory dinner with Mrs. Patel, and spent Sunday evening preparing for her first day in her new role. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Dressed in her black dress again, a shopping trip for more appropriate work attire would have to wait until her first paycheck, Melissa dropped Tyler off at school before heading to Meridian Technologies. "Good luck, Mom," Tyler said, hugging her tightly before joining his classmates. "You're going to be awesome." His confidence buoyed her as she navigated the morning commute to the gleaming office tower. Sophia met her in the lobby, provided her with an employee badge, and escorted her to the operations department on the 14th floor. Patricia Langdon was waiting, ready to introduce Melissa to the team and begin her orientation. The morning was a whirlwind of new faces, systems, and responsibilities. Around noon, Daniel Mercer stopped by her new desk. "Settling in all right, Ms. Carter?" "Yes, thank you," Melissa replied, still somewhat in awe of the rapid change in her circumstances. "Everyone has been very welcoming." "Excellent. I have a feeling you're going to thrive here." He paused, seeming to consider something. "I hope this isn't overstepping, but I took the liberty of arranging for an advance on your first paycheck. Sophia has the details. I thought it might help with immediate expenses." The gesture left Melissa momentarily speechless. "That's incredibly generous, thank you." Daniel nodded, his expression unreadable. "We take care of our own at Meridian. Welcome to the team, Melissa." As he walked away, Melissa reflected on the strange series of events that had led her to this moment. From being fired at the diner to sitting at a desk in a corporate office, all because a CEO had happened to observe her during a particularly difficult time in her life. There was still something about the situation that felt unresolved, as if there were pieces of the puzzle she couldn't yet see. But for now, she would focus on learning her new role and building a better life for Tyler. The day passed quickly, with Patricia proving to be a demanding but fair supervisor. By 5 o'clock, Melissa's head was spinning with new information, but she felt a deep satisfaction that had been missing from her previous jobs. As she prepared to leave, Sophia stopped by her desk with an envelope. "Your advance, as Mr. Mercer mentioned, and Melissa, it's good to have you with us." The envelope contained enough cash to cover their rent with some left over, a buffer that would allow Melissa to breathe easier until her regular paychecks began. That evening, she and Tyler celebrated with pizza delivery, a rare treat, and discussed plans for the future. Maybe a new apartment in a few months, perhaps summer camp for Tyler, something she'd never been able to afford before. "Mom," Tyler said as they cleaned up the pizza boxes, "do you think the man who gave you the job is like a guardian angel or something?" The innocent question made Melissa smile. "I don't think Daniel Mercer would describe himself that way. He's a businessman who saw potential in me, that's all. But it's weird, right? That he was at the diner right when you needed help?" Tyler's observation echoed Melissa's own lingering questions about the timing and circumstances of her employment. "Sometimes life works out in unexpected ways," she said, ruffling his hair. "The important thing is that we make the most of the opportunities we're given." As the week progressed, Melissa settled into her new role with growing confidence. The work was challenging but engaging, using skills she had almost forgotten she possessed. Her colleagues were generally welcoming, though a few seemed curious about her rapid hiring and Daniel's personal involvement in bringing her aboard. Patricia Langdon proved to be an excellent mentor, demanding but generous with knowledge and guidance. By Friday, Melissa had already implemented several improvements to the department's filing system that had earned her supervisor's approval. At home, the atmosphere had lightened considerably. Tyler seemed more relaxed, his school troubles apparently resolved after the bullying situation had been addressed. He talked more about his classes, his friends, and the books he was reading. Simple conversations that had been crowded out by stress in recent months. The following Monday, 2 weeks into her new position, Melissa was summoned to Daniel's office. She had seen little of the CEO since her first day, as he traveled frequently for business. His corner office was spacious but surprisingly understated, with large windows overlooking the city and a desk noticeably free of clutter. "Please sit down," Daniel gestured to a chair across from his desk. "How are you finding the position so far?" "It's been excellent," Melissa answered honestly. "Challenging but rewarding. Patricia is a wonderful supervisor." She speaks highly of you as well. Says you've already streamlined several processes that were long overdue for improvement. Melissa accepted the compliment with a nod, still uncertain about the purpose of this meeting. Daniel seemed to sense her question. I called you in today because there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you. Something personal. The statement immediately put Melissa on guard. Despite the professional environment and Daniel's previous kindness, she was acutely aware of the power imbalance between them. Sensing her discomfort, Daniel quickly added, "Nothing inappropriate, I assure you. It's about your son, Tyler." Melissa's wariness shifted to confusion. "Tyler? What about him?" Daniel paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. "When you were at the diner that day and received the call from his school, I overheard you mention his name, Tyler Carter." Melissa nodded slowly, unsure where this was leading. "The name struck me because—" Daniel hesitated, then continued, "because my brother's name is Mark Carter." The words hung in the air between them, their implications slowly dawning on Melissa. "Mark Carter is your brother?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded, his expression grave. "Half-brother, technically. Different fathers, same mother. He took our mother's maiden name after a falling out with our family." Melissa's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't even known existed. "And you knew who I was when you offered me the job? That Tyler is your nephew?" "Not immediately," Daniel admitted. "But after hearing your name and Tyler's, I suspected. Mark had mentioned a Melissa years ago before he left for California. When I saw you at the diner dealing with school issues for a son whose age would match the timeline, I became curious." "Curious?" Melissa repeated, a spark of anger kindling within her. "Is that why you offered me the job? Out of some misplaced family obligation?" Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. "No, I offered you the job because you're qualified and capable. But yes, the connection is what initially drew my attention to you. I won't deny that." Melissa felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. The job offer that had seemed like a miraculous stroke of luck now appeared in a different light. Still fortunate, perhaps, but tainted by hidden motives. "Does Tyler know?" she asked, her voice tight with emotion. "That you're his uncle?" "No," Daniel shook his head. "I wouldn't presume to insert myself into his life without your permission. That's why I wanted to have this conversation." Melissa stood abruptly, needing to move to process this revelation. "I don't understand. If you're Mark's brother, why now? Where have you been for the past 9 years?" "I didn't know about Tyler until recently," Daniel explained. "Mark and we haven't been close. After he left for California, we lost touch for several years. It was only last year when our mother became ill that we reconnected briefly, and he told you about us then. He mentioned having a son he'd never met. He didn't provide details, but he did say the mother's name was Melissa. When I heard your name at the diner, it triggered that memory." Melissa paced the office, struggling to contain her emotions. "So what is this? Guilt by proxy? You're trying to make up for your brother's abandonment?" Daniel's expression remained composed, but she could see the impact of her words. "Perhaps partly, but it's more complicated than that. Our family has a history of broken connections. I've spent much of my adult life trying to repair what I can. And I'm just another broken connection to fix? A charity case?" The words came out harsher than she'd intended, but the sense of betrayal was overwhelming. "No," Daniel said firmly. "You're a capable professional who deserved better than what life has handed you. And Tyler is my nephew, whether or not Mark has chosen to acknowledge that relationship." Melissa stopped pacing and faced him directly. "What do you want from us, Daniel? What's your endgame here?" It was a blunt question, but she needed clarity. This revelation had upended the narrative of the past 2 weeks, casting her lucky break in a more complicated light. "I don't have an endgame," Daniel replied after a moment. "I saw an opportunity to help, so I took it. What happens next is entirely up to you." "And if I decide I don't want anything to do with Mark's family? If I walk out of here and find another job?" "The job is yours, regardless of our connection," Daniel said without hesitation. "You've already proven your value to the company. As for any personal relationship between us or between me and Tyler, that's your decision entirely." Melissa sank back into the chair, the initial shock giving way to a complex tangle of emotions. Anger at the years of struggle when Mark's family might have helped. Gratitude for the opportunity Daniel had provided, regardless of his motives. Uncertainty about what this meant for Tyler, who had so recently been asking questions about his absent father. "Does Mark know about any of this?" she asked finally. Daniel shook his head. "No. We've spoken only a few times since our mother's illness, and not at all in the past few months. Is he still in California? As far as I know. He was trying to make it as a session musician, last I heard." The information was oddly painful, a reminder of the man who had chosen his dreams over his responsibility to his child. "I need time to process this," Melissa said finally. "This isn't just about me, it's about Tyler and what's best for him." "I understand completely," Daniel assured her. "Take all the time you need. The job remains yours, regardless of what you decide about the family connection." As Melissa left the office, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The revelation of Daniel's connection to Mark, and therefore to Tyler, had thrown her carefully reconstructed life into question once again. But amid the confusion and anger, there was also a flicker of something else. A possibility that Tyler might have family beyond just her. An uncle who, unlike his father, seemed willing to acknowledge him. What that would mean for their future remained to be seen. The revelation of Daniel's connection to Mark, and by extension to Tyler, left Melissa reeling for days. At work, she maintained her professional demeanor, focusing on her duties and avoiding Daniel when possible. He respected her need for space, communicating mainly through email and brief work-related exchanges. At home, she grappled with the decision of whether to tell Tyler about his newfound uncle. The boy had been in good spirits since the bullying situation had been resolved, and their financial pressure had eased. Introducing this new complication seemed potentially disruptive. A week after Daniel's revelation, Melissa found herself sharing her dilemma with Mrs. Patel during one of their now weekly dinners. "Family is complicated," the elderly woman observed, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "But secrets have a way of becoming burdens." "I'm not sure Tyler is ready for this," Melissa admitted. "He's just starting to feel secure again." Mrs. Patel's dark eyes were kind but direct. "Children are resilient, Melissa, more than we give them credit for. And they sense when we are hiding things, even with the best intentions." The wisdom in those words resonated with Melissa. That night, after Tyler had gone to bed, she sat at their small kitchen table, drafting a pro and con list about telling him the truth. The exercise, simple as it was, helped clarify her thoughts. Pros: Tyler would know he had extended family. He might find some security in that connection. Keeping secrets could damage trust if discovered later. Cons: it might reopen wounds about his father's absence. Tyler might feel confused or conflicted about this new relationship. Daniel's intentions, while seemingly good, were still not fully clear to her. By morning, Melissa had made her decision. She would tell Tyler about Daniel, but cautiously, presenting it as a new discovery rather than a life-changing revelation. She would let Tyler set the pace for any relationship that might develop. The opportunity came that weekend, during their Saturday morning pancake tradition. As Tyler drizzled maple syrup over his stack, Melissa broached the subject. "Tyler, do you remember my new boss, Mr. Mercer, the one who gave me the job at Meridian?" Tyler nodded, his mouth full of pancake. "I found out something interesting about him recently," she continued, keeping her tone casual. "It turns out he's related to us in a way. He's your father's half-brother, which makes him your uncle." Tyler's fork paused midway to his mouth. "I have an uncle?" The concept seemed to surprise him more than the specific connection. "Yes, Mr. Mercer, Daniel, only recently found out about you. That's part of why he offered me the job. He wanted to help us." Tyler processed this information, his young face serious. "Does that mean my dad is coming back?" The question pierced Melissa's heart. Of course, that would be his first thought. "No, honey. Your father and Daniel aren't very close. They haven't spoken in months. This is just about Daniel wanting to know his nephew, you." "Oh." Tyler's expression was hard to read, a mixture of disappointment and relief, perhaps. "So what happens now? Do I have to meet him?" "Only if you want to," Melissa assured him. "There's no pressure at all. Daniel understands that this is a big surprise, and he's willing to take things at whatever pace feels comfortable for you." Tyler was quiet for a moment, poking at his pancakes. "Is he nice?" The simple question made Melissa smile. "Yes, I think he is. He's been very kind to us, offering me the job and being understanding about my schedule with you." "Does he like video games?" "I don't know," Melissa laughed. "We haven't really had personal conversations like that. Tyler nodded, apparently satisfied with the information for now. Maybe I could meet him sometime, not right away, but sometime. That sounds like a good plan, Melissa agreed, relieved by his measured response. We can take all the time you need. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Melissa could tell that Tyler was still processing the revelation. That night, she found him looking at the single photograph she had of Mark. A faded snapshot from before she was pregnant, the two of them smiling on a summer day that felt like it belonged to another lifetime. "Do I look like him?" Tyler asked, not looking up from the photo. Melissa sat beside him on his bed. "You have his smile," she said honestly, "and his talent for music. Remember how quickly you learned those piano pieces at school last year?" Tyler nodded, still studying the photograph. "Do you think Daniel looks like him too?" "A little," Melissa admitted. "They have similar eyes, but Daniel is more polished, I guess. More serious." "I want to meet him," Tyler decided suddenly. "This weekend, maybe." The certainty in his voice surprised her. "Are you sure? There's no rush, Tyler." "I'm sure," he said, finally looking up at her. "He's family, right? Like Mrs. Patel says, family is important." The simplicity of his reasoning touched her. "Okay. Shall talk to Daniel and see if we can arrange something casual, maybe lunch on Saturday." Tyler agreed, and Melissa found herself both nervous and cautiously optimistic about the meeting. The next day, she approached Daniel after a department meeting. "Tyler would like to meet you," she said without preamble. "Are you free for lunch this Saturday?" The surprise and genuine pleasure on Daniel's face convinced her that whatever his initial motives, his interest in getting to know Tyler was sincere. "I'd be honored," he said. "Just name the time and place." They arranged to meet at a family-friendly restaurant near the park where Tyler liked to play. As Saturday approached, Melissa was surprised to find that Tyler seemed more excited than anxious about the meeting. He asked questions about Daniel, what he did at Meridian, where he lived, whether he had children of his own. "No children," Melissa answered to this last question. "He's not married. I think he's been very focused on his career." "Like a workaholic?" Tyler asked, picking up the term from somewhere. Melissa smiled. "Maybe a little, but people can change and grow, right? Like how you've become so much more confident in math this year." The day of the meeting arrived with unexpected sunshine after a week of rain. Tyler insisted on wearing his good shirt, a button-down that he usually reserved for school picture days, and spent extra time combing his hair. Daniel was already waiting when they arrived at the restaurant, dressed more casually than Melissa had ever seen him, in jeans and a navy sweater. He stood as they approached, his expression a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. "Tyler, this is Daniel Mercer," Melissa said formally. "Daniel, my son Tyler." Tyler stepped forward, extending his hand as Melissa had taught him. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Mercer." Daniel shook the offered hand with appropriate seriousness. "It's very nice to meet you too, Tyler. And please call me Daniel or Uncle Daniel if you prefer." The uncle designation hung in the air for a moment before Tyler nodded. "Okay, Uncle Daniel." The initial awkwardness gradually eased as they ordered food, and Daniel asked Tyler questions about school, his interests and his friends. He listened attentively to Tyler's answers, showing genuine interest in a way that clearly delighted the boy. "Mom says you're a CEO," Tyler said as they worked their way through burgers and fries. "What does that mean exactly?" Daniel explained his role in terms Tyler could understand, describing Meridian Technologies as a company that created computer systems for hospitals and schools. Tyler was particularly interested in the technical aspects, asking surprisingly insightful questions about how the systems worked. "You've got a natural curiosity about technology," Daniel observed. "That's a valuable trait these days." Tyler beamed at the compliment. "I like computers. We have a computer lab at school, but the machines are really old. Perhaps we could look into upgrading those," Daniel suggested, glancing at Melissa as if seeking her approval. "Meridian has an educational outreach program that donates equipment to schools." Melissa appreciated that he had checked with her before making the suggestion. "That would be wonderful if it's something the company already does." "It is," Daniel confirmed. "We believe in investing in technology education. The next generation is our future workforce, after all." As lunch progressed, Melissa observed the interaction between Tyler and Daniel with a mixture of emotions. There was undeniable joy in seeing Tyler engaged and animated, asking questions about technology and business that she couldn't always answer. But there was also a pang of something like loss, a reminder of the father figure Tyler had been missing, and now suddenly had a version of in his uncle. After lunch, Daniel suggested they walk to the nearby park. Tyler ran ahead to the playground while the adults followed at a more sedate pace. "He's remarkable," Daniel said, watching Tyler climb confidently up a complex jungle gym. "Smart, curious, well-mannered. You've done an amazing job with him, Melissa." The compliment was sincere, and Melissa accepted it with a nod. "It hasn't been easy, but he's worth every struggle." They sat on a bench, watching Tyler navigate the playground with the easy confidence of childhood. "May I ask you something personal?" Daniel ventured after a comfortable silence. Melissa tensed slightly, but nodded. "Why did you never pursue child support from Mark?" Legally, he would have been obligated, regardless of whether he signed away his parental rights. It was a question Melissa had asked herself many times over the years. "Pride, initially," she admitted. "I was hurt and angry when he left, and I wanted to prove I could do it on my own. Later, it was more practical. I had no idea where he was, and the legal costs of trying to find him and establish support seemed prohibitive." Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And now?" "Now?" Melissa watched Tyler swing from one bar to another, his face alight with the simple joy of movement. "Now I think Tyler deserves to know his father, if Mark ever decides he wants that relationship. But I've stopped waiting for it to happen." "You're an extraordinary woman, Melissa," Daniel said quietly. "Many people would be bitter in your situation." She smiled ruefully. "Oh, I've had my bitter moments. But bitterness takes energy, and I haven't had much to spare." They lapsed into silence again, but it was a comfortable one, built on a growing understanding. After about an hour at the park, Tyler ran back to them, flushed and happy. "Uncle Daniel, do you want to try the zip line? It's really fun." The formal Mr. Mercer had been completely abandoned, replaced by the familial title with the easy acceptance that children often bring to new relationships. Daniel hesitated, glancing down at his casual but still expensive attire. Then, with a grin that made him look years younger, he stood. "Why not? Lead the way, Tyler." Melissa watched in amused disbelief as the CEO of Meridian Technologies followed her son to the zip line, listened carefully to Tyler's detailed instructions, and then launched himself across the playground with an exuberant whoop that drew smiles from other parents. By the time they said goodbye later that afternoon, the initial awkwardness had completely dissolved. Tyler hugged Daniel without prompting, a gesture that clearly moved the older man. "Can we do this again?" Tyler asked, looking between his mother and his newly discovered uncle. "I'd like that very much," Daniel replied, his voice slightly rough with emotion. "Perhaps next weekend? I thought we might visit the Science Museum. They have a new technology exhibit that I think you'd enjoy." The suggestion was met with enthusiastic approval from Tyler, and after confirming the details, Daniel took his leave, promising to stay in touch during the week. As Melissa and Tyler walked home hand in hand, she studied her son's face, looking for signs of confusion or distress. Instead, she found only contentment and excitement. "I like Uncle Daniel," Tyler declared, skipping slightly beside her. "He knows a lot about computers and stuff." "He seems to like you too," Melissa replied, squeezing his hand gently. "Do you think—" Tyler began, then hesitated. "Do you think he might tell my dad about me? About how I'm doing in school and everything?" The question revealed the hope that still lingered in Tyler's heart, despite years of absence. Melissa chose her words carefully. "I don't know, honey. Daniel said they don't talk very often, but perhaps someday if that's something you want." Tyler nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer for now. "I'm glad he found us anyway." "Me too," Melissa said, surprised to realize she truly meant it. The following weeks established a new rhythm to their lives. Melissa continued to excel in her position at Meridian, taking on additional responsibilities as Patricia Langdon recognized her capabilities. Tyler's school performance improved, his earlier behavioral issues seemingly resolved with the combination of addressing the bullying and the stabilization of their home life. Daniel became a regular presence, joining them for weekend outings and occasionally for dinner during the week. His relationship with Tyler blossomed, built on shared interests in technology and science, as well as Daniel's genuine effort to engage with the things that mattered to a 9-year-old boy. With Melissa, Daniel maintained a respectful friendship, never overstepping boundaries or pressuring her for more than she was comfortable sharing. They developed a rapport based on mutual respect and the shared priority of Tyler's well-being. About a month after their first meeting, Daniel invited both of them to his home for dinner, a spacious penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of the city. Tyler was suitably impressed by the state-of-the-art entertainment system and the small robotics workshop Daniel had set up in one of the spare bedrooms. "This is so cool," Tyler exclaimed, examining a partially assembled drone on the workbench. "Did you build this yourself?" "I did," Daniel confirmed, pleased by the boy's interest. "It's a hobby of mine. Building and programming robots. Would you like to help me finish it sometime?" The offer was met with enthusiastic agreement, and plans were made for Tyler to return for a robotics workshop the following weekend. As Tyler explored the apartment under Daniel's supervision, Melissa found herself studying the photographs displayed discreetly on bookshelves and side tables. Most featured Daniel in various professional settings or outdoor adventures, but one caught her attention, a family photo from what appeared to be decades earlier. She recognized Daniel as a teenager, standing beside a woman who must be his mother, and next to them, a younger boy with a familiar smile that she had seen countless times on Tyler's face. "That's Mark," Daniel said quietly, having noticed her interest in the photograph. "He was about 14 there. I was 19, home from my first year of college." Melissa studied the image of the younger Mark, trying to reconcile it with the man she had known briefly but intensely all those years ago. "You both look happy." "We were then," Daniel acknowledged with a hint of sadness. "Things changed after that. Our mother remarried, and Mark, he didn't adapt well to having a stepfather. Started acting out, getting into trouble. By the time he was 17, he was barely speaking to any of us." The insight into Mark's background was both illuminating and painful. Melissa had never known much about his family history. He had been reticent about his past during their brief relationship. "He never mentioned having a brother," she said, setting the photograph back in its place, "or any family troubles. Mark has always been skilled at reinventing himself," Daniel replied, "leaving the past behind. It's why he changed his last name, I think. A fresh start." The conversation was interrupted by Tyler's return, eager to show Melissa a gaming system Daniel had set up in the living room. The evening continued pleasantly, with Daniel proving to be an excellent cook and thoughtful host. As they prepared to leave, Daniel handed Tyler a small package. "A little something to get you started on your robotics education," he explained. Tyler unwrapped it eagerly to find a beginner's robotics kit, complete with programming guides and components. His thanks were effusive and genuine, his excitement palpable. On the bus ride home, Tyler clutched his new gift, already planning the robot he would build. "Uncle Daniel is the best," he declared. "Do you think I could be a robotics engineer when I grow up?" "You can be anything you set your mind to," Melissa assured him, warmed by his enthusiasm, but also aware of how quickly Daniel had become a central figure in Tyler's life. She hoped the relationship would continue to develop positively, without complications or disappointments. The next significant shift came 2 months later, when Daniel approached Melissa at work with an unexpected proposal. "I've been thinking about your commute," he began as they shared an elevator after a department meeting. "It's quite long, isn't it? Almost an hour each way." Melissa nodded, unsure where the conversation was heading. "It's not ideal, but it's manageable. There's an apartment becoming available in my building," Daniel continued. "A 2-bedroom on the 10th floor. The current tenants are relocating for work. It would cut your commute to less than 15 minutes. The suggestion caught her off guard. "Daniel, I appreciate the thought, but there's no way I could afford an apartment in your building, even with my improved salary." "That's the thing," he said, hesitating slightly. "The building is owned by a real estate investment trust that Meridian has a stake in. As a key employee, you would qualify for the corporate housing program, which offers significantly reduced rent." Melissa was immediately suspicious. "Is this a real program or something you've arranged specifically for us?" Daniel had the grace to look slightly abashed. "The program exists, but I may have expedited your eligibility. However, the discount is legitimate and available to several Meridian employees. You would not be receiving special treatment that could compromise your professional standing." The offer was tempting. Their current apartment, while adequate, was still in a neighborhood that had its share of problems. The school district was improving but still underfunded, and the daily commute did take a toll, especially on days when she needed to work later. "I'd need to think about it," she said finally. "And discuss it with Tyler. It would mean changing schools, leaving Mrs. Patel." "Of course," Daniel agreed immediately. "Take all the time you need. The apartment won't be available for another month anyway." That evening, Melissa presented the possibility to Tyler, careful to frame it as an option rather than a decision. To her surprise, he was immediately enthusiastic. "We'd live in the same building as Uncle Daniel. That would be awesome. And my new school might have better computers." His excitement gave her pause. "Tyler, we don't have to move if you don't want to. I know you have friends here, and Mrs. Patel. We can still visit Mrs. Patel," Tyler reasoned with the straightforward logic of childhood. "And Jason still bothers me sometimes at school, even though he got in trouble. A new school might be better." The revelation that the bullying situation wasn't as fully resolved as she'd thought was concerning. "Why didn't you tell me Jason was still bothering you?" Tyler shrugged. "It's not as bad as before, and you were happy about your new job. I didn't want to worry you." The statement reflected a maturity beyond his years, but also a concerning tendency to shoulder burdens that should be shared. "Tyler, you can always tell me when something's bothering you. That's my job as your mum, to help with the hard stuff." He nodded, but she wasn't entirely convinced he understood. Still, the conversation had clarified that Tyler was open to the move, perhaps even eager for it. The decision then would rest on her own feelings about the situation. Over the next few days, Melissa weighed the pros and cons carefully. The practical benefits were undeniable: a safer neighborhood, better schools, a shorter commute, potentially more time with Tyler. The apartment itself would almost certainly be an upgrade from their current place, with its persistent maintenance issues and aging infrastructure. The main concern was the growing dependency on Daniel. While he had proven to be reliable and genuinely caring over the past months, accepting such a significant benefit from him represented another level of entanglement. What if something went wrong? What if he decided he'd done enough for them? What if Mark reappeared and complicated the dynamics? In the end, practical considerations won out over abstract concerns. Melissa accepted Daniel's offer, with the clear understanding that they would pay the reduced rent themselves. No further subsidies or assistance. The move itself was relatively simple, as they had few possessions to transport. Daniel arranged for a moving company, despite Melissa's protests that they could manage with a rented truck. Mrs. Patel hosted a small farewell dinner, extracting promises of regular visits and phone calls. "Family grows in many ways," the elderly woman said wisely as they said their goodbyes. "Sometimes by birth, sometimes by choice. This uncle, he has chosen to be family to you and Tyler. This is a blessing." The new apartment exceeded Melissa's expectations. Spacious and modern, with large windows and updated appliances, it felt like a home from a different world than the one they had inhabited for so many years. Tyler was ecstatic about his own room, which was nearly twice the size of his previous one, with built-in bookshelves and a desk for his robotics projects. The first night in their new home, after Tyler had finally fallen asleep amid the excitement, Melissa stood by the living room window, looking out at the city lights. The view was not as spectacular as from Daniel's penthouse, but it represented a perspective she had never imagined having, literally and figuratively. From struggling single mother to corporate professional with a promising career path. From a cramped apartment in a struggling neighborhood to a modern home in one of the city's better areas. From isolated parenthood to a support system that now included not just Mrs. Patel and friends like Dina, but also Tyler's uncle, who seemed genuinely committed to being part of their lives. The transformation was still difficult to fully comprehend. There were moments when Melissa felt like an imposter in this new life, waiting for someone to realize she didn't belong. But those moments were becoming less frequent as she continued to prove herself at work and adapt to their changed circumstances. Tyler thrived in his new environment. His new school had better resources, including an advanced computer lab and a science program that captivated his interest. He made friends quickly, his natural curiosity and enthusiasm serving him well in the transition. Daniel maintained a presence in their lives without overstepping. He joined them for dinner once or twice a week, helped Tyler with science projects, and occasionally accompanied them on weekend outings. With Melissa, he developed a comfortable friendship based on mutual respect and shared interest beyond their family connection. Life settled into a new normal that felt increasingly sustainable. Melissa was promoted to senior executive assistant within 6 months, with a corresponding salary increase that further solidified their financial stability. She began taking online courses toward completing her bachelor's degree, a goal that had seemed impossible just a year earlier. The next significant development came unexpectedly, nearly a year after Daniel had first approached Melissa in the diner. They were having dinner in Daniel's apartment, celebrating Tyler's excellent performance in a school science fair, when Daniel's phone rang. He checked the caller ID and his expression shifted subtly. "Excuse me, I should take this," he said, stepping into his home office. When he returned several minutes later, his face was serious. "That was my mother," he explained. "She's been in touch with Mark. Apparently, he's back on the East Coast and wants to reconnect with the family." The statement hung in the air, its implications immediately apparent to both adults. Tyler, focused on dessert, didn't immediately register the significance. "Has he mentioned?" Melissa began, glancing meaningfully at Tyler. Daniel shook his head. "Not specifically, but Mother may have told him about my involvement with you both. She's been curious about Tyler since I mentioned him." The prospect of Mark potentially re-entering their lives after nearly 10 years of absence was both disruptive and inevitable. Melissa had always known this day might come, but the timing, just when they had found stability and happiness, felt particularly challenging. "What do you think he wants?" she asked quietly, while Tyler was distracted by a new robotics program on Daniel's tablet. "I'm not sure," Daniel admitted. "Mark has always been unpredictable, but Mother says he seems to have matured. He's been sober for 2 years, has a steady job as a music teacher." The information was surprising. Mark had enjoyed his drinks during their relationship, but Melissa hadn't realized his issues with alcohol had escalated to the point of requiring sobriety. It explained some things about his behavior in the past, though it didn't excuse his abandonment of their son. "Does he know where we are? That we're connected to you now?" she pressed, needing to understand the potential implications. "Mother may have mentioned it," Daniel acknowledged. "I haven't spoken to him directly yet." The conversation was interrupted by Tyler, who had finally tuned into the tension between the adults. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" Melissa exchanged a glance with Daniel, a silent communication passing between them. This was her decision to make, whether to tell Tyler about his father's potential reappearance and how much to share. "Tyler," she began carefully, "we were just talking about your father. It seems he's moved back to this area recently." Tyler's eyes widened, a complex mixture of emotions flashing across his face. Hope, anxiety, curiosity, apprehension. Does he want to see me? The direct question deserved an honest answer. "We don't know yet, honey. Uncle Daniel just heard that he's back in town. But if he does want to meet you, we'll need to think about whether that's something you want too." Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Would I have to live with him sometimes, like Jason does with his dad?" "No," Melissa assured him firmly. "You live with me. That wouldn't change. If, and this is a big if, your father wants to be part of your life, it would be more like visiting, getting to know each other." Tyler nodded, his expression serious beyond his years. "I think I'd want to meet him just to see, but I don't want things to change too much. I like our life now." The simple statement was both reassuring and poignant. After years of struggle and recent months of stability, they had finally created a life that felt secure and happy. The prospect of Mark's return threatened that equilibrium, regardless of his intentions. "Nothing will change without your input," Daniel assured his nephew. "And whatever happens, your mum and I are here for you." The inclusion of himself in that statement was significant, a declaration of commitment to Tyler's well-being that transcended biological obligation. Melissa felt a surge of gratitude for his presence in their lives, complicated as the circumstances might be. The evening ended on a subdued note, with the possibility of Mark's reappearance hanging over them. As they returned to their apartment, Tyler was unusually quiet, lost in thoughts about the father he had never known. Over the next few days, Melissa watched her son carefully for signs of distress. He seemed pensive but not upset, occasionally asking questions about Mark that she answered as honestly as possible. What did he like to do? Music. Always music. Was he funny? Yes, when he wanted to be. Did he know how to build robots like Uncle Daniel? No, but he could build guitars from scratch. A week passed with no further news, and Melissa began to hope that perhaps Mark had changed his mind about reconnecting with the family. Then, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, Daniel called. "Mark contacted me," he said without preamble. "He wants to meet Tyler." Melissa's heart raced, a complex mixture of emotions washing over her. "What did you tell him?" "That it wasn't my decision to make. That you and Tyler would need to discuss it and decide what you're comfortable with." She appreciated his respect for their autonomy in this situation. "Did he say why now, after all these years?" "He says he's changed," Daniel replied, his tone neutral. "That getting sober made him reevaluate his life and the people he's hurt. He mentioned making amends, which is part of the recovery process." The explanation was reasonable, and yet Melissa found herself skeptical. Mark had always been charming and persuasive, quick with justifications for his behavior. Was this genuine growth or another performance? "I need to talk to Tyler," she said finally, "and I need to think about this myself. If we decide to proceed, it would need to be carefully managed. I won't have Tyler hurt by false promises or inconsistent attention." "I understand completely," Daniel assured her. "For what it's worth, Mark seemed sincere, but you know him better than I do in many ways. Trust your instincts." After ending the call, Melissa found Tyler in his room, working on a school project. The normality of the scene, her son focused and content in their home, made the prospect of disruption even more concerning. "Tyler," she began, sitting on the edge of his bed, "I just spoke with Uncle Daniel. Your father has contacted him. He's asked to meet you." Tyler's hands stilled on his project, his expression suddenly intent. "Really? When?" "That's up to us," Melissa explained. "If you want to meet him, we can arrange it. But it's your choice, Tyler. You don't have to if you're not ready." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Would you be there too?" "Of course," she assured him immediately. "I wouldn't leave you alone for a first meeting." "And Uncle Daniel?" The question surprised her. "If you want him there, I'm sure he would come." Tyler nodded, his decision apparently made. "Then I want to meet him, with both of you there." The certainty in his voice was both reassuring and concerning. Melissa didn't want him to be disappointed if the meeting didn't live up to his expectations. "Tyler, I want you to understand something. Your father, he's missed a lot of your life. He might not be what you're expecting. And even if the meeting goes well, I don't know how consistent he'll be about staying in touch." "I know," Tyler said, with a maturity that sometimes startled her. "I just want to see him, to know what he's like, and to show him that I'm okay even though he wasn't here." The resilience in that statement brought tears to Melissa's eyes. This remarkable child, who had faced abandonment and uncertainty with such courage, continued to amaze her with his emotional wisdom. "I'm so proud of you," she said, pulling him into a hug. "So incredibly proud." After confirming with Tyler that he was certain about wanting to meet Mark, Melissa called Daniel back to begin the arrangements. They agreed on a meeting at a neutral location, a family-friendly restaurant with a casual atmosphere that would minimize pressure on everyone involved. Daniel would speak with Mark to set the parameters, a lunch meeting limited to 2 hours with both Melissa and Daniel present. No promises or commitments would be made regarding future contact until they saw how this initial meeting progressed. The day of the meeting arrived with a mix of sunshine and clouds, a fitting metaphor for the complex emotions swirling through their small family. Tyler had dressed himself with unusual care, choosing his favorite blue shirt and actually combing his hair without being reminded. "You look very handsome," Melissa told him, her heart aching with a mixture of pride and apprehension. "Do you think he'll like me?" Tyler asked suddenly, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through his carefully maintained composure. "He would have to be absolutely crazy not to," Melissa assured him, kneeling to straighten his collar. "You are the most amazing person I know, Tyler Carter. Never doubt that." Daniel met them in the lobby of their building, his presence a steady anchor in the emotional turbulence of the day. He had maintained a careful neutrality regarding Mark's return, neither encouraging nor discouraging the reunion, but his support for whatever Melissa and Tyler decided had been unwavering. "Ready?" he asked simply. Tyler nodded, reaching for his mother's hand as they walked to Daniel's car. The drive to the restaurant was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about the meeting ahead. Mark was already there when they arrived, seated at a corner table near the back of the restaurant. Melissa recognized him immediately, despite the passage of years. His hair was shorter, with threads of silver at the temples, and lines had formed around his eyes, but his smile, the smile that Tyler had inherited, was unchanged. He stood as they approached, his expression a mixture of nervousness and hope. "Melissa," he said softly, "thank you for coming." For a moment, she was transported back to their last conversation, nearly 10 years earlier. His casual dismissal of the pregnancy, his offer of money for an abortion, his signature on the papers relinquishing his parental rights. The anger she had carried for so long threatened to resurface, but she pushed it down, reminding herself that this meeting was for Tyler, not for her. "Mark," she acknowledged with a nod, then placed her hands gently on Tyler's shoulders. "This is your son, Tyler." Mark's gaze shifted to the boy, his eyes widening slightly as he took in the features that mirrored his own. "Hello, Tyler," he said, his voice rough with emotion. I'm very happy to meet you." Tyler studied his father with the same intense focus he brought to his science projects, taking in every detail. "Hi," he said finally, his tone cautious, but not unfriendly. Daniel stepped forward then, breaking the moment of tension. "Mark," he greeted his half-brother with a brief handshake. "Let's sit down, shall we?" The initial awkwardness gradually eased as they ordered food and began the careful dance of conversation. Mark asked Tyler about school, his interests, his friends, safe topics that allowed the boy to share as much or as little as he felt comfortable with. Tyler, for his part, seemed both eager to talk and wary of revealing too much, his natural enthusiasm tempered by a protective reserve that Melissa had rarely seen in him before. "Uncle Daniel is teaching me about robotics," Tyler mentioned at one point. "I built a rover that can navigate around obstacles by itself." The statement, casually delivered, carried significant weight, an acknowledgement of the role Daniel had assumed in Tyler's life, a role that should have been Mark's. Mark glanced at his half-brother, a complex emotion flickering across his face. "That's great," he said finally, returning his attention to Tyler. "You must be very smart. I was never good with technology." "Mom says I got my love of music from you, though," Tyler offered, perhaps sensing the need to include his father in some aspect of his identity. "I'm learning piano at school." This common ground seemed to animate Mark, who leaned forward eagerly. "Really? That's wonderful, Tyler. Music has always been... well, it's been everything to me. Sometimes too much so," he added with a rueful glance at Melissa. The conversation continued, weaving between safe topics and occasional forays into more meaningful territory. Mark spoke briefly about his work as a music teacher at a community center, his ongoing sobriety, and his gradual reconnection with family. "I made a lot of mistakes," he acknowledged during a lull in the conversation. "Leaving when your mom was expecting you was the biggest one. I can't change that now, but I want you to know that it wasn't because of you, Tyler. It was because I was selfish and scared and, well, not the man I should have been." The admission seemed sincere, and Melissa found her anger softening slightly, though not dissolving entirely. People could change. She knew that intellectually. But the pain of those early years alone with a newborn, struggling to survive, couldn't be erased with a single apology. Tyler absorbed his father's words with a thoughtfulness beyond his years. "Uncle Daniel says everyone deserves a second chance if they're really trying to do better," he said finally. The simple statement, delivered without judgment or accusation, seemed to affect Mark deeply. He blinked rapidly, averting his gaze for a moment to compose himself. "Your uncle is a wise man," he said when he could speak again, "wiser than I gave him credit for when we were younger." As the meal concluded, the inevitable question arose. What happened next? Mark was careful not to press, but his hope for continued contact was evident. "I'd like to get to know you better, Tyler," he said cautiously, "if that's something you'd want too. Maybe we could meet again sometime. Perhaps I could hear you play piano." Tyler looked to his mother, silently seeking guidance. Melissa weighed her response carefully, wanting to protect her son while also acknowledging his demonstrated desire to know his father. "We could arrange something," she said finally. "Perhaps in a few weeks. We'll need to discuss it and see what works with our schedule." It was a measured response, neither shutting the door nor throwing it wide open. Mark accepted it with a nod, clearly understanding the tentative nature of this reconnection. As they prepared to leave, Mark pulled a small package from his jacket pocket. "I brought something for you, Tyler. It's not much, but..." Tyler accepted the gift, opening it to find a handcrafted wooden guitar pick with his initials carved into it. "I made it," Mark explained. I do some woodworking now. It's not really a functional pick, too thick, but I thought you might like it as a keepsake. Thank you, Tyler said, running his finger over the carved initials. It's really cool. The simple exchange was loaded with meaning. A father giving his son a token created by his own hands, a small piece of himself to carry forward. Outside the restaurant, goodbyes were exchanged with awkward handshakes and promises to be in touch. As Mark walked away, Tyler watched him go, his expression thoughtful. "What did you think?" Melissa asked gently as they walked to Daniel's car. Tyler considered the question seriously. "He seems nice. Sad, though." "And not as cool as Uncle Daniel," he added with a small smile in his uncle's direction. Daniel chuckled, ruffling Tyler's hair affectionately. "Well, I've had more time to work on my cool factor." The light moment eased some of the emotional intensity of the day, but as they drove home, Melissa could tell that Tyler was still processing the meeting. That night, as she tucked him in, he asked the question she had been anticipating. "Will he stay this time, my dad?" Melissa sat on the edge of his bed, choosing her words carefully. "I don't know, honey. I hope he means what he says about wanting to be part of your life, but even if he doesn't or can't, remember that you have me, and Uncle Daniel, and Mrs. Patel, and so many people who love you completely." Tyler nodded, his eyes drifting to the wooden guitar pick on his nightstand. "I'm glad I met him, but I'm more glad for you and Uncle Daniel." The simple statement warmed Melissa's heart. Whatever happened with Mark in the future, whether he became a consistent presence or drifted away again, they had built a family that was strong and loving, capable of weathering whatever came their way. In the weeks that followed, Mark maintained contact initially through texts and calls, and eventually through carefully arranged visits. He seemed genuinely committed to building a relationship with Tyler, though he was careful to respect the boundaries Melissa established. Daniel remained a steadfast presence, neither interfering with Mark's efforts nor abandoning his own role in Tyler's life. The brothers established a cautious rapport, their shared interest in Tyler creating a bridge across years of estrangement. For Melissa, the journey had come full circle in ways she could never have imagined that morning at Sunrise Diner when she had shouted, "Leave my son alone," in desperate defense of Tyler. What had begun as one of the lowest points in their struggle had led through an unlikely chain of events to the creation of an expanded family and a more secure future. Tyler thrived in this new reality, his initial wariness giving way to a confident acceptance of his complex family structure. He maintained his special bond with Daniel, while gradually building a relationship with the father who had missed so much of his life. As for Melissa, she found herself finally able to release some of the anger and resentment she had carried for so long. Not for Mark's sake, but for her own and for Tyler's. The past couldn't be changed, but the future remained unwritten, full of possibilities that once would have seemed impossible. One evening, as she watched Tyler working on a robotics project with Daniel while Mark played guitar softly in the background, an impromptu family gathering that would have been unimaginable a year earlier, Melissa reflected on the strange, winding path that had led them here. From a single mom waitress shouting in desperate protection of her son to a professional woman with a career path and a support system. From isolation to community, from struggle to stability. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. But looking at her son's face animated with joy and security, she knew that they would face whatever came next together, not alone as they had been for so long, but surrounded by a family that had been forged through both blood and choice. And in that moment, Melissa Carter knew that they would be all right. I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey of Melissa and Tyler. Their story reminds us that life can change in unexpected ways, and that family can be formed through both blood and choice. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more engaging narratives like this one. Your support helps us continue creating content that connects with viewers around the world. I'm curious, what part of the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. Your perspective adds to our global community, and I'd love to hear which elements of the story resonated most with you based on your own experiences. Thank you for spending time with Melissa, Tyler, and their journey. Stay tuned for more captivating stories coming soon.